All right. Welcome to another show. Correction. Another conversation. Real talk, which is a concept that came to me through all of the amazing people that I've met throughout my life, and just some of the conversations that I was able to have. And what happened was, um, it occurred to me at some point, like, what if people got to see or be a part of some of the conversation with these individuals who inspired me, who has guided me, who helped me get to where I am, or kept me from going in a different direction. And it was just one of those things where it was like, you know what? Let's have a conversation with real people about real things, not just the mega superstars about everything that they go through, but real life people who are succeeding, who has figured it out. Some people who are still trying to figure it out. Some people who just want to tell their story. But today's show, let me tell you about this. This man is one of the people who I asked to be on this show because his art has always inspired me. And when I say his art, the brother's prolific. The way he speaks, the things he speaks to, I am, and anybody who knows who I am and what I do, I've been a poet for over 20 plus years, hosted some of the dopest and largest poetry venues ever, and out of Colorado, always done it. But this brother that I have an opportunity to call to the conversation table today is someone that I've been, following for a long time, and she's just a good guy, and I consider him a brother. So I'm gonna hit the request button, and I'm gonna let y'all get a chance to witness who this amazing guy is. So keep in mind, if you have any questions, there you go,
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
man. I'm good. I'm blessed and favored. How are you?
Same, man.
Yeah,
Blessed, absolutely blessed. It's good to hear that.
yeah. You sitting still for a quick minute, man, because I know you be everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be home till tomorrow.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. So, for the people who are not aware and cannot see the name on the screen, this is the one and only Mr. Obi West. And this brother has been taking the poetry, singing, the entertainment scene. I can't even just call it poetry, man. You've been killing the entertainment scene for quite some time now. And
Appreciate that.
one of the things that I enjoyed the most is going through my timeline and seeing you on there, and for this 30 seconds or however long this reel is going to run, you're going to get the most amazing art and the truth. And poetry has always been considered the voice of the streets and the voice of the people. So you've been killing that, man. So congratulations, first of all, on that.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, brother, we're going to get into it because you got a conversation to get to.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so, first of all, where are you from?
Originally Los Angeles. Live in Las Vegas right now, but originally Los Angeles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what part of Los Angeles was it?
South Central.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you grew up in the trenches.
Yeah. Yeah. It don't feel like the trenches when you in it. It just feels like it's normal.
Yeah.
And then when you leave it and you go other places, then you realize, damn, I just walked out the mud. Right.
Yeah. Now that's crazy because you said like when you in it, you don't really feel it, like because that's the culture, right? That's just how you were raised. That's what you used to see.
Yeah, it's normality. You know what I mean? It's normality. I remember, just for an example, I remember I was in the military and I went overseas. And the place that I went to, they was burning human feces on the place where I was going to live. And I remember when a helicopter landed and I got off the helicopter, you couldn't even, it was horrendous. It wasn't even tolerable. After about a week, I didn't smell it no more. You know
Mm.
what I
Yeah,
mean?
because
Because I was in it every day. It became normal. So when you grow up in a place that's not tolerable, after about a week, you don't smell it no more.
yeah, Say it's normal for you. That actually starts smelling like potpourri for a minute, right?
Right.
Hey, so
Yeah.
with that being said, hold on, man. You were in the military?
Yeah. 21 years.
Wow, wow. So now I don't, we men, so I guess it's okay to ask the question, brother. How old are you?
44. What year is this? 44? 40,
25.
44. Yeah, 44 until the end of this year. My birthday's in December.
Okay, and you were in the military for 21 years?
21. Yeah.
Jesus. So what did that look like? You went straight out of high school to military, or?
Immediately. I'm talking about as soon as I walked out the classroom. I was 17 years old and I left at 17. I didn't really have any family history of military or anything like that. It's just one of those things to where if you show somebody something that they don't have access to, they'll deal with whatever it takes. So, I grew up in a family where money wasn't really plentiful. You know what I
Right.
mean? So then when you hear a recruiter say, hey, we're going to pay you every 14 days and you don't have to pay to live, you don't have to pay to eat, you don't even care about what risk you have to take to go. You just waving something in front of my face that I don't have access to here. And boom, I left.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. Would you consider it even doing college? Were you in a position to go to college, or?
Nah, the high school that I went to wasn't really accredited that way. I remember hearing a statistic years ago. I went to a high school called Fremont High School, and there was another high school in Los Angeles, and I remember hearing a statistic. I don't know how true it was, but at the time they were saying that a 4.0 at my high school was equivalent to like a 2.0 at that high school, right? So to have a 4.0 at my high school, that wasn't attractive to college. That didn't mean much.
Right.
Right. The only how you was going to get out of my high school on a scholarship was sports. Right. So and my mother didn't, and I wasn't going for sports, and my parents didn't have the money for me to pay any other way. So college wasn't even an option for me. Then most of the people in my family, I don't know anyone in my family that graduated from college. So high school was the pinnacle. Right. So when everybody else graduated from high school and nobody went to college, then high school becomes the bar. There's not even an expectation beyond that.
Yeah. Now, with that being said, man, you said that your parents, so your mom and dad, you grew up with your father in the home and all of that there?
No, not in the home, but in my life. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He was probably in the home until I was about 9. After that, he wasn't in the home, but he was in my life. He was down the street. He was, somewhere in the city, and we still communicate. He was still a father. He just wasn't in the house.
That's dope. So that's dope. And so you were saying that you did being in South Central, and I'm 4 years older than you, so the gang culture was prevalent in our era. Did you ever get caught up in that, or was you able to kind of escape that?
Well, both are true. I escaped it and I got caught up in it. I got caught up in it because we all grow up as children, and everybody, no one is affiliated. We're just kids, and then as we grow up, somebody is affiliated. This person does this person does this, but we all still friends, right? So in LA, when somebody ride down your street and they looking for someone who's rival, they're not asking, hey, where you from? And you say, I'm from such and such. They're not saying, is your friend from there too? They're not saying that. If I'm with that person, then I have to inherit whatever heat that comes with that, right?
Right.
So everybody's affiliated. Everybody is affiliated. If you live in LA, I remember standing on the corner of Vermont and Florence, and the car pulled up on me and said, hey, where you from? I said, I don't bank. They said, where you live? So now I have to know in my head where I'm standing, what hood is relevant to this. I got my grandmother's house that's down there. If I say that address, they're going to associate me with this gang. My mother's house is down there. If I say that address, they're going to associate me with that gang. Which one of those gangs do they likely get along with? That's the address I'm going to give them. Right? So you got to know where I'm at and all these. So they would ask you what your address is. Whatever your address was, they would associate you with that, and whatever problems came with that address. So everybody was affiliated, if you look at it from that standpoint.
Yeah.
But have I ever been put into a gang or violent? No, never.
And see, so a lot of people hear like that, the Kendrick Lamar album, that, what is it, Good Kid, Bad City?
Good kid,
Good, good Kid, Bad City. And they heard that little skit where it was like, where you from? Where your mama from? Where your grandma stay at? Where your dad stay at? A lot of people thought that was just a skit, but that was real life.
That ain't no skit. He may as well have a microphone, just a a hovering microphone over the streets of LA. That was literally how it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, with that being said, man, growing up in that environment, how much debt and friends did you lose even just in the process of growing up?
There's a lot of death. When we were in high school, there were people who were lost just by the affiliation that I'm talking about, where they weren't directly involved in any gang lifestyle, but they were in that area. There were people who were directly into it who were lost. So there was a lot of loss. I can probably run down a list of people who I grew up with, whether they was real close friends or not. It was just somebody who I knew of and saw every day at school who wasn't even here when I left high school. So it was a lot of loss.
Yeah. And one of the things with our era is the gangbang era was like, I know for me personally, I didn't even really see death until I got into my teens. And back in the days, we used to have to like get those the black market videos that call Faces of Death. They used to show the graphic stuff and things of that nature. Um, how old was you when you actually first seen some wild stuff go down?
Great question. I don't know how old I was. I can't even think back to what that first thing may have been. And a wild thing may not have necessarily been seeing someone lose their life before me. It was just being in situations where lives were almost, or minds was almost lost. I remember being home one day, and I mean, I don't want to get into the whole story, but you hear there were some people that I grew up with, or that was older than me. They grew up with my mother's and my uncle's generation, and they were down the street from where I was at. And then you hear shots, right? And at first, you just kind of be desensitized to it because you hear shots all the time. You don't know if somebody's shooting in the air or something like that, so it don't really move you that much. But these sound a little bit closer, and then you hear other things associated with those shots that lets you know that there's activity. You hear cars screeching, right? And it was maybe two houses down where there was a bunch of people standing in front of this house. This house had like a little brick thing in front of it, and they got shot at. And then the car took off. When they take off, you see them pick up whatever they had behind those brick walls, and you standing there on that street thinking, wait a minute, that was two houses down. And then the next day is just back to regular scheduled programming. So I don't remember how old I was when that happened. And then later on in life, when I was getting ready to go to high school, you have situations like that where I was the direct target, me and a friend of mine. And I don't even know if we have even processed it. Yeah, I don't even know if we have even processed it. But it was just kind of like, you know.
Yeah. And so, for one, it's almost crazy that we can have this conversation and speak about it in normality. Like, yeah, when this happened, you hear gunshots, and you know what it is, and you kind of just let it be what it is. Like that, for some people, like that's their nightmare, and that's what others was living on a day-to-day basis. So, congratulations for one for I want to say making it out, but being blessed and covered, right?
Appreciate
But with you getting to the military, brother, were you in active duty?
Yeah.
So the things you seen over there.
Yeah, that was that was different because you didn't have time to mourn anything, right? Because you're actively in the space where there are people who their intent is to kill you every day. So you don't have time to take a knee and mourn something that happened. You have to acknowledge what just happened to somebody and then get right back to work.
Yeah.
And as soon as you take your mind off of that, then you become vulnerable. You're not as visual as you need to be. You're not as aware as you need to be. The biggest thing, believe it or not, the biggest thing about being in those situations while you're in the military is you have to develop a coping mechanism. You have to go over there knowing I'm going to be gone for this period of time. The entire time I'm there, there's this group of people who are looking to cause this type of harm. And I have to be able to psychologically withstand while I'm over there. And I have a family that's back home that I can't be worried about, because if I'm worried about them, then I'm not paying attention here. So in developing those coping mechanisms, sometimes you end up, I know what happened to me, the coping mechanism that I developed, it resulted in an, an inability, right? There's a reluctance to feel when feeling becomes uncomfortable. We put ourselves in a situation where we don't want to have to feel. Then there's an inability where you're sitting amongst a bunch of people, something happens, and you see how the average person feels, and then you don't have those feelings. And you wonder, well, I don't feel what they feel.
Right.
You know what I mean? To the point where it became a diagnosis. Like the VA pays me every month for what I'm talking to you about.
Right.
So I think the biggest thing or the long-lasting effect of being over there is the the second and third effects of your coping mechanism, right? You start flipping switches off. And then when you get back to the United States, you don't know how to reach them, to flip them back on. They're just off now. And you
Right.
still have family who expects you to be emotionally supportive. You still have people around you who are feeling things in connection to situations, but you don't mirror that same feeling. But now you have to figure out how to be supportive when you don't know how to be, when you can't physically empathize, right? So now your support comes by way of logic. So it's just a whole it's a whole relearning thing that you have to do. Therapy was big for me, is big for me, but it's a real, because you can't use numb as an excuse to be insensitive.
Correct.
There's still people around you who have a dependency on your support if you're part of their support system, and they're going through something that has conjured a feeling, and they're looking towards you for some type of support. You can't say, well, I don't feel, so I ain't got shit for you. No, you still have to figure out how to be supportive in the absence of having that feeling. And so
One of the things you said was logic replaces that actual feel. So in the process of you going through like the emotion, did it of course, and I hear what you're saying exactly, but in the point you're saying it made you cold. And you had to learn how to go through that process of finding those switches and being able to figure out a way to relate to people who had the things you didn't, the emotions, the feelings. How long of a process did that take?
that's not a process that has a that's like adulting. It's like being an adult, right? It is, how long did it take you to learn how to be an adult? No, you still learn it. You're gonna learn something tomorrow. You know what I
Right.
mean? So it's not one of those things that you learn it and the learning process has an end date. You don't graduate. You know what I mean? Every day. You just have to keep on figuring out how can you show up in the spaces that you influence in a healthy way, considering what the situation is with you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Now, if I went to how long did it take me to realize it was necessary? Probably not long after redeployment the first time. I remember coming home. I remember leaving. And I remember being on this bus, and I think I went on leave or something. And my daughter, I have pictures of this. My daughter was at the bus station with her mother. She had on one of my military hats, and I'm pulling off in that bus, and I'm looking at her, and I mean, there's tears all over my body because I'm getting ready to leave my daughter and go to this place, and I don't know what the outcome is going to be. And I remember coming back, and those same feelings I had for my daughter, they, it's even bothersome to say it. They weren't really there. I still loved her, but I didn't have, if she and I was in the same place, we was getting ready to separate and go somewhere different, I didn't have those feelings that I had back then. And this is when I recognized that something's different, right? So you start figuring out how to fix that. And then that's when you start resorting to therapy and all that kind of stuff. And therapy didn't really fix me, but it taught me who I was so that I had the information to explain it to the people who were around me.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? So it gave me the information I needed about myself in order for me to take the steps I needed to take in order for me to show up for the people around me. That's an ongoing process.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's big. I have a brother, man, who was active duty, and his PTSD is completely an ongoing process, and there's plethora of medication that he takes to even cope with some of the things, and I've watched him go through the process of even not wanting to sleep because of the things that he can't get out of his head, or loud noises that throw him off completely, and we could be in a great space, and those are the things that people who don't know him look at him like, oh yeah, he's crazy, but you don't know his story, you don't know the things that he deals with, just to be able to function in the space that most people move effortlessly in.
Right.
So with that being said, man, I noticed that you had mentioned that you started writing poetry. Uh, was it 2012?
One.
2001.
2011. I'm sorry, 2011.
2011 is when you started writing your poetry.
Yeah.
Now, was that something that you always did, or is it something a way for you to, like, where did the poetry come from? Was you a rapper and just got tired of, you know, a lot of poets?
No, I've never rapped, never been able to rap. And no, poetry wasn't anything that I was familiar with prior to that time frame. It was literally something I was oblivious to one day and absolutely in love with the next day. I went to an event that was advertised as a comedy show. What I didn't know, it was an open mic, and the feature was a comic. But I didn't know what an open mic was. I just thought I was going to see a comedian. And it was across the street from my house, and I was living in Killeen, Texas. And I went over there to see the comedian, and there were some poets who were on an open mic. So they started introducing these poets. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what a comedian, right? To this day, I don't even remember the comedian. And I remember every poet.
Yeah.
Right. So that was just, you can't think of anything else like it. If you've seen a comedian stand on the stage and tell jokes, and if you think about what that looks like, if you've seen a singer stand on the stage and sing, and you think about what that looks like, none of these things look like a spoken word presentation. You know what I mean? None of these things have people that are on stage in real life crying, in real life on their knees with their hands up. You know what I mean? The level of emotion that people are able to freely demonstrate during a spoken word poem was unlike anything I had ever seen. And it was during a timing, it was timing. Like, you know, like the Blueprint, the Jay-Z album, the Blueprint. Largely, that album was a great album largely because of the time frame it came out. It was the momentum that Hove had from Reasonable Doubt, from Volume 1, and then, right? If that same album came out today, we'll appreciate it, but it might not be as impactful because of the timing. And that's what it was. It was a time frame in my life that made that situation super impactful. If I went to that same show maybe 5 years prior, it may not have had the impact. But it was a time in my life where I had been in the military for 14 or 15 years. No, 13 years. 13 years. And maybe a month before that, a week before that, I remember thinking to myself, I have no clue who I am outside this uniform. I've been doing this since I was 17. I'm 31 years old. If I got fired today, who the hell am I tomorrow? Because every day I wake up to accomplish the requirements of this organization. I wake up, I go do what they want me to do. I come home, I take the uniform off, I go to sleep, I wake up and I go do that again. If I didn't have them building a structure for me, what do I want to do? So it was during the period of my life where I just didn't know who I was outside of that. And then you see that form of expression where people are digging deep within themselves and publicly, and it clicked with me. So I left the show that night and I went and wrote 2 of what I consider poems within the next 30 days. I wrote 2 poems. And I asked the guy before I left, I said, how do I do that? He was like, it's an open mic. You just come sign your name on the list. So 30 days later, I went and signed my name on the list, and I did them 2 poems. Yeah.
And the rest was history, huh?
Yeah.
And so what's crazy is I have a very similar story to you. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to front. I used to write, you know, little poems to girls in high school and all that kind of, you know, middle school, all that little cute stuff. But I didn't have any idea that poetry was that impactful. And I was involved in the gang culture too. And seeing people that vulnerable on the stage and being able to speak from a place to, what threw me about it is that when the first time I got on stage and did a poem, is that they applauded my pain because it was a piece about being broken. And when they applauded it, it kind of threw me off because it was good to get it off my chest, but then it was kind of awkward that was entertaining for them. You know, so when you actually got into writing the poems, was it immediate that you were able to pour yourself into the poetry and become vulnerable, or was that something that you learned through the process of writing and just pushing yourself to put more into the poem itself?
No, it was on sight. It was immediate. At no point have I ever felt any reservations about writing about a certain topic. Well, let me retract that. Erotic poetry. When I first started writing, somebody who I really look up to, Fatodi. Fatodi is a poet that was in Killeen, Texas. He was part of the Killeen Poetry Slam. And I really admired how he did what he did. And I remember he told me one day, he said, it's easy to go in a room full of adults and say something nasty and get their attention. He said, erotic poetry is almost a fluke. He said, but try going in there talking about a topic that they're not interested in and getting their attention.
Right.
Right. So when he told me that, I felt like to write an erotic poetry was a fluke. So maybe the first year or two, I didn't really, if I did write something, I wouldn't share it. But aside from that, I can't remember that one time where I had reservations about what I wrote. I mean,
Yeah. And so, I mean, and that's actually in itself, that's a gift, right? Because to be perfectly honest, there's still poets, and there's poets who've done it in the past and poets who do it now, who were comfortable writing the perception of their self they want it to be, other than their emotions and who they really are and what they really feel on paper, because with the oohs and ahs of the crowd that they were going for, other than the therapy of release. Now, is that how you seen poetry, as a therapy thing for you?
I think it became that. I don't think I sat in that seat that night when I first saw those poets and said, this is going to be therapy for me. But quickly it became that. For me, it was one of those things where when you grow up in certain environments, you have things that you need to talk about. You have things you want to get off your chest. Even in my household, even if we remove what happened outside of my house, in my household early in life, there was abuse in the household. And as a child, when you witness that, those are things that even if you don't know, that you need to talk about. But as a black boy living in Los Angeles, California, just a black boy on earth, you don't really have society's permission to talk about anything that makes you look vulnerable. They associate vulnerability and emasculation are pretty much synonyms, right? But when you're doing it from a artistic standpoint, the art gives you the permission that your genetic license doesn't give you, right?
Right.
So,
Artistic free.
right. So now I can talk about those things that I didn't have the space or even know how or know I needed to talk about back then. So that's what it was. It was, you ever see these videos that's on the computer right now where they put these kids in the bathroom and they said, you got 2 minutes to say all the cuss words you want to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
You hear that? And they walk out and they shut the door and the kid be in there, going off in the mirror. That's what it was. Like, you got 3 minutes to get on stage and say everything that you want to say that you don't know how to say in a face to face. And as soon as they shut the door,
And I'm killing this fight.
Yeah.
And
That's what it was.
and so with you doing that, when did you realize that people gravitated towards it? Like, or was that even a thing for you? Was it like, I'm doing this for me, I don't care how they respond? Or did you do it and was like, wait a minute, like, because I know when I did the poem and somebody walked up to me, I was still in gangbang mode, man. At the time, I was going through the end of a murder case, and dude walked up on me, and I was in defense, because that was just our nature at the time, to be in defense. And when he walked up, he was like, man, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Me and my brother were just talking about that, man. I needed to hear that. And I was expecting something totally different. And it didn't even resonate to me that what I had just done had affected somebody else. So
Yeah.
when you did your pieces and you got on that stage, did you know immediately that, hey, I could catch people, or was that even something that you paid attention to?
No, I didn't know. I didn't know immediately. It was a release for me. Later on, those poets who went on stage prior to me, the ones who I said I saw, the event prior, that was the motivation. It was part of KPS. It was a Clean Poetry Slam. It was those poets who was there for that open mic. So they was absolute professionals at what they did, right? So I started hanging around them, going to their events. They started allowing me to keep the time at their slam, stuff like that. So that acceptance from people who was doing it on such a high level, that's what made me feel like I must be doing this to an extent that it's somewhat impressive. You know what I mean? But off the bat, when I first started, no, I didn't know. It was just for me. It was a selfish gesture.
Yeah. And man, I'm so glad you were selfish, brother, because the art that you done gave the world in the meantime, in between time, is just ridiculous. And you know what's crazy is that, like I said, I had followed you for a long time, and I was aware of who you was. But in this poetry community, this poetry world, you know, there's some heavy hitters, there's some staples, there's some some matriarchs that you just know and you know. And it's funny because your name has entered many different rooms, of course, that you know that you have never actually physically walked into. But when I'm talking to, some of the heavy hitters and I mention your name and they're like, oh yeah, that's my brother. Yeah, that's my brother. I was there when, when he did his first poem. I was there when he was, you have so many people who follow your art through the process. Do you, and I'm asking this, for the people watching, because I kind of have my own perception of it. But do you ever get uncomfortable with people feeling like they know you because they follow your art so closely that they think that they actually like know you, or do you feel that they do because you share so much in your art? That
Great
was a
question.
loaded question, huh?
No, but it's a great question, and I understand exactly what you're asking me. I I don't get uncomfortable because I understand where it stems from. Um, I've probably disclosed more about myself in poems than I have in general conversation. There's people in my family who have learned things about me via a poem who knew me since I was born and didn't learn it from the time I was born up until this time frame until they heard a poem. So I understand where it stems from, so it doesn't make me uncomfortable. But there are times where I may have received a message or something like that, and the nature of the message was like way like it might be somebody who I've never met before. They're not part of the poetry community, never exchanged dialogue via messages or anything of that nature. And I'm coming to that city. It's like, yeah, whenever you get here, you can just stay at my house. Like, why would I be comfortable? You know what I mean? Like,
They,
why would
they
you
say like
even
I
be
know you, like
comfortable?
I know
Yeah,
all
why
about
would
you.
you even be comfortable extending that to me? And then how would I conjure the comfort to even accept, right? And so situations like that really made me feel like wow, there's people who I've never said, never seen, never spoke to, who feel like we may have seen each other, may have talked, just because of how connected they are. So it's a good and a bad thing. It just shows that what you're doing is resonating,
Mhm.
but then you still have to be able to just create those boundaries so that you'll end up putting yourself in a situation that's not healthy.
Man, you are giving me every segue I need. This is awesome. So, with that being said, creating those boundaries also have to be created within yourself, right? Because now you're in a space where you're getting this attention that maybe you didn't get before. You're walking into these rooms where people feel like they know you and they're attracted to everything you do because they're a fan, they watch, or whatever it may be. Did you ever have to kind of, I want to say, monitor yourself or reel yourself in and say, like, yo, I gotta act a certain way. I gotta act accordingly because, you know, I could lose myself out here. I could lose myself in these lights. I could lose myself in this mic.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a man covered with flesh. You know what I mean? So, and there's many ways that many reasons why you have to create those boundaries. But if I'm just talking about me specifically, I mean, I grew up in an environment where that's what all we talked about as little boys, is the girls that was walking by. So when you establish yourself to a point that what you do becomes so attractive that people are drawn to you in that way, yeah, you can't early on, I realized you can't go in every room to look for someone to walk out of that room with. You know what I mean? It was very, very important for me to protect what I was doing. And you start to do that. And before you know it, that information starts to circulate. And now it overshines the reason why you actually there. You know what I mean? And then
Absolutely.
I'm also an advocate for sexual assault and harassment prevention. So I operate in a lot of spaces and do trainings for abuse reduction to tell people, how to keep their hands to themselves, how to obtain consent, to emphasize how relevant male victimization is. And I don't care what type of stage you're standing on. If you are a man who, one, seems open with communicating, and who can articulate, is going to become attractive to someone. So even in those spaces, you'll find yourself faced with opportunities to, do certain things. And you just have to, what is it I'm here for? What am I trying to protect? And for this 4 or 5 minutes that I'm gonna go do whatever this thing is, what else is at risk? And then just make those things more important than, than those, those,
Situations.
yeah, absolutely.
Now,
Yeah.
did you learn the hard way, or was that something that you went in and you was paying attention to and said, "Hold on, I gotta figure this out"? Or did you get into a couple of situations that was like, "I can't do that again. Like I can't put myself in this situation."
Well, both. I didn't really learn the hard way. I didn't run into no, I didn't crash out to a situation to where it almost was a detriment to everything I have going on. Just maybe not taking the time to taking advantage of a situation, not taking the time to learn the person who's adjacent to you in front of you. And then when you do learn them, it's somebody who, if you took the time, you would have never even put yourself in that space in the first place. You know what I mean? And that's a lesson I could have learned whether I was a poet or not,
Right.
right? But it's never been to the point to where, wow, I went in here and did this, and this almost cost me these opportunities. So fortunately, it was because I started doing poetry. So I was 31 when I started doing poetry. So a lot of information I had just came by way of maturation, just came by way of already living. So I didn't have to bump my head in order to learn them. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But if I would have started doing poetry when I was 18, 19, I would have learned everything the hard way.
Everything.
Everything.
Hey,
Yeah.
and you know what's and I ask those kind of questions because what, and they're not even just women, but what people are attracted to is a individual's power. And to be
Mhm.
able to stand on that stage and command a room for however long that mic is on, that is a almost like a godly power for that moment. And a lot of people, and I told poets this, and I told people who asked that when you are on a stage, there's three things that happen, three or four things that happen, right? For one, the stage is elevated, which puts you at a height that's above everyone else, which means that everybody's attention and focus is on you when you're up. So now they're looking up to you. 9 times out of 10, there is a light shining on you, which means that in this dark space, that you're the only illuminated light, which means that all the focus needs to be on you. Three is that your voice is being amplified because you're the only one with a mic, which means that you need to be heard. And it puts you in a space to where, in that moment in time, you are complete focus, your complete attention. And having that kind of power and that kind of control, a lot of people are just enamored by that. And
Yeah.
I've watched poets, I've watched individuals, successful rappers, artists, whatever it may be. I've watched people, like you mentioned, crash out because they've got so encased and so involved in that moment that when the lights cut off and that mic goes dead, that they don't have an identity. Did you
Yeah.
ever feel like you had lost your identity in the art?
Hell no.
Come
But
on
I
now.
do think, but I do feel like if I would have started earlier, when you 17, 18, you are your environment. Whatever the people around you are, that's what you are. And then at some point we start transitioning into ourselves, right? So if I would have learned poetry before I transitioned into myself, then I would have had those issues. Because I was so much older when I started. Nah, not at no point. I'm not. You have some people who their worth it derives based off of the attention that they get. You know what I mean? You have people who thrive for power. So when they feel it, it really contributes to their esteem. And for me, that's not me. It's just the opposite for me. Certain levels of accolade, certain levels of notoriety, it makes me feel uncomfortable. So that high stage that you're talking about, I don't stand on it. I sit on it. I want to bring myself back down to the level of these people I'm talking to as much as I can. You know what I mean? I don't want a mic stand in front of me because now if you and I was talking right now, but it was a big ass bar in the front of the screen in between us, it would ruin the connection between you and I. So I'm gonna remove that so I can look at the person in front of me so they can feel like there's not an inferior, superior thing. They can feel like we're all on the same level. So I'm not a power freak. So it's never really, that's not anything that I yearn for. So as a result, I'm fortunate that I'm not that. As a result of that, I've never went through these bouts where I felt like I lost myself to the claps or lost myself to the applaud. I think the second and third effects of that as an artist can be because now you stop talking about the things that are important to you. You only start talking about what you know they're going to clap for, right? you start adopting opinions that's not your own. They're just a popular opinion. So the second and third effects of losing yourself to power is it's a it's a snowball. You know what I mean? So
Man, it turns into a mountain at some point. Um,
absolutely.
one of the things that I wonder, so with you coming into the game and being so close to some of the people who, like you said, who were professionals and elite at what they've done and learning from those people and being accepted by those people, coming into the game, you know, did you ever run into a situation where it was like you felt like the gatekeepers, like you ran into gatekeepers who were trying to keep you keep you at bay because they knew your resources or they knew your talent? Did you ever run into that to where the gatekeepers were trying to keep you out?
I didn't run into it. If it happened, I wasn't aware of it. The people around me have been so supportive. And for me, those gatekeepers would have been people like Christopher Michael. It would have been like for us, those were the people above me who I was looking up to. But they were always nothing but supportive. So if there was a gatekeeper, that's who it would have been. And I think I took a different route. So because I took a different route, I didn't run into that. Most routes for people is slam. That's how they established their notoriety in poetry, is going through slam. And that's where they start running into barriers and they start running into people who don't want them to excel. I didn't take that route. So because I didn't take that route, if there was a gate, I probably crept around it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
climbed over to some on accident.
Yeah.
And that's dope, man. And that's a really good thing that you didn't have to go through that, because there are a lot of so originally, I think of poetry kind of now, and it's I don't know if it's politically correct to say or not, but they call me real for a reason. I think of poetry now as transformed a lot. The concept, the basis of it has transformed a lot from when I originally started. When I originally started doing poetry, I kind of came in during that Love Jones era, where everybody was, love, third eye from the sun, Ashun, Queen, let it be, and it was all of, really pro-black, really messaging poetry. And I was one of the ones who was the gangbanger who didn't know I had a talent and got on stage and, like you, realized, like, wait a minute, like this is it for me. Um, and it wasn't so much accepted. But then, poetry over time, I feel has turned from what hip hop has turned to more like rap, and then rap turned to mumble rap, you know,
Mhm.
and it goes through those cycles. Do you feel like the evolution of poetry? Do you feel like there's been an evolution in poetry? Let me ask that first.
Well, from the time I started until now, I could definitely see the trend changing. And I think what happens is most people are part of poetry communities where we have a circle of us around us that's doing the exact same thing. So it's like anything else. If you take a kid from LA, you take him when he's 5, and you move him to Georgia, if you go visit him when he's 11, he's going to have a Georgia accent because he's been around that accent for so long. So I think that's what happens with poetry is we people are part of these poetry communities, and then the accent of that community, everybody has it. So when you can listen to somebody and say, "Oh, they're from Houston," you can listen to somebody and say, "Oh, they're from this place," because that accent, not the accent of how they pronounce their words, but the accent of how they present themselves. So I've seen it change based on who is the most dominant person in this space right now. I remember when Rudy Francisco was the most dominant person in the slam community, and it sounded to me like that was the sound of poetry. And then there was a point where Ed Mabry became the most dominant person in the space. So it seems to me I've seen change, and that change has pretty much been driven by who is the most dominant force at the time
Yeah,
right now. You know what I mean?
those who mimic it, because it's popular, but that's most likely where they got their inspiration from as well. Um, One of the things that, like, in Atlanta is really big on poetry communities. I know Chicago has a really big poetry community. Texas, Houston is huge. So they have multiple poetry communities and things of that nature. Um, so when we talk about, like, the communities, one of the things that kind of I realized when I got into the poetry community, for one, is that shit could be like a soap opera. It could literally it could be like a soap opera. So you got into it, like you said, when you were a little bit older. So congratulations that you probably missed a lot of the bullshit. But
Appreciate it.
the thing about it is that, man, some of these things that you run into in these poetry communities turn out to be like the love and hip hop of poetry. Where it's not so much about the art as much as it is about the reputation or the who's of what, and it's gotten away from the soul of the art and being able to move and use this to intrigue people and evoke emotion. Um, do you feel like that has ever been a situation that you've witnessed, like the love and hip hop of poetry? Have you ever witnessed that, or have you been able to just constantly kind of remove yourself from those situations and not have to deal with it?
Witnessed it, yes. I've heard, instances where you have certain poetry circles who don't see eye to eye with another circle. So I've witnessed it and I heard about its existence. Me personally, I've never been a part of it because I'm not, Killeen, that circle of people in Killeen, that was pretty much it when it comes to being connected to a circle. So I'm not within a circle, but I'm cool with all these circles. You know what I mean? But I'm not part of I'm kind of on the outskirts of those things. You know what I mean? So no, me personally, I've never been in the midst of it, but I have heard that those quarrels exist. I've heard people who slam and they talk about their route when maybe they joined the Woman of the World or some other one, and they was talking about the journey of going to the top and how this person did this and this person said this and this person didn't want to give them the opportunity to do it. And I sat back like, it's like church beef. Like this really, you had church beef and you don't believe that this is happening in church. Like this is happening in church.
Yeah.
You got the people, the women on the motherboard pinching each other on it. You know what I mean? And it was like this happening in poetry. We supposed to be the peaceful genre.
So poetry is what poetry is, man, and you have created such an amazing lane in poetry for yourself, um, intentional or not. One of the things that stand out about, well, actually, let me ask you this before I even get to this. Do you feel like there's a difference between poetry and spoken word?
Yes, I do. I think poetry is the umbrella. I think spoken word is a form of poetry, right? You have poetry readings, and we expect a certain sound from that. We expect somebody to stand in front of us with one of those trays that hold paper, and we expect to hear about the galaxies and the cosmos.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then you have spoken word, where you expect somebody to be emotional, to act it out. Spoken word is like the Holy Ghost. You know what I mean? So I think spoken word is a genre of poetry that falls under the umbrella of poetry, like music. You have an umbrella of music, but then you have R&B, then you have hip hop, then you have. I think our umbrella is called poetry, and spoken word is just one of the branches of that umbrella.
So do you feel that? How do you feel when people classify you as like a spoken word artist as compared to a poet? Does that bother you at all, or does it matter? Because some people look at spoken word being like the elevation of poetry, like you said, poetry is the umbrella, but the spoken word is the expression, the artistic, the you know.
Yeah, I think if you call me a spoken word artist, that you're calling me a poet. I don't think I can be a spoken word artist without being a poet. I think I can be a poet without being a spoken word artist. You know what I mean? But I don't think it's the other way
Yeah,
around. But frankly, I don't give a shit what nobody calls. You know what I
yeah. And just
mean?
so you know,
Yeah.
the answer was hella poetic. But so, like you said, man, frankly, you don't give a shit what nobody thinks about you because when you do start to get up there, this is what fills your soul. Is that my understanding?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. It's just like a lung for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, man, a lot of people follow you with your art and things of that nature. I mean, don't get me wrong, I met you because I came to see you do your thing and got a chance to speak to you. One of the things that was really surprising about it, and anybody and most of the people in these comments who have said it, who's ever met you, is that you are exactly who you are. Like you come across as, which hearing you speak now, it makes sense, right? Um, but outside of the poetry, when the mic goes off, what is it that Mr. West does to get calibrated?
Great question. I'm an absolute recluse. Right? I spend a lot of time alone, right? And in doing that, it I like it to being at say you go to an intersection, when you pull up to that intersection, there's like 50 different routes that you can go off this one intersection. At some point, it's going to cause paralyzation because you don't know which way to go. So you're just sitting there, right? So those intersections to me are the outside noise. Whenever you hear this outside noise influencing you this way, and this is influencing you this way, and this is influencing you this way, this is influencing you this way, and you don't know which, it just causes paralyzation. I spend a lot of time alone. I close out that outside noise. As a result of that, all I hear is myself. So it allows me to learn a lot about who I am. It allows me the freedom to self-assess. It allows me the space to make adjustments based off what I learned within that assessment. It allows me the opportunity to keep my own voice because I don't hear all the outside voices, so I don't know what to copy. All you hear is yourself. You don't know what to. So for me, I spend a lot of time alone. I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of being alone. And I have very, very rigid boundaries. I have boundaries. What I've learned is a lot of people in the world, whether it's conscious or subconsciously, and it's not a testament or it's not an indication of a bad person, it's just human nature. A lot of people are more concerned about what they want from you than they are about what you need for yourself. You know what I mean? And we have been conditioned to succumb to that. We have been conditioned to give, give, give. If we don't, it's considered as selfish. We want to protect ourselves from the title of being selfish, so we surrender it all. And once we surrender it all, we got this much left, and then we try to take care of ourselves with that much. So for me, I don't subject myself to that. I'm going to make sure I take care of myself first. And then after that, I can make myself available in the spaces that I want to be supportive in. So in that, I have a lot of boundaries. I don't say yes to everything that I'm asked to do. I don't feel the pressure to pick up my phone just because it rang. I don't feel the pressure to explain why I haven't picked up my phone. I've alleviated myself of a lot of pressures that we naturally succumb to. And it's tough to establish those boundaries because you got to see a lot of sad faces and puppy eyes in the beginning. But once you establish it once, they know, right? So those two things, I spend a lot of time alone and I protect that time alone with boundaries. And that in itself allows me to stay centered.
That you had mentioned earlier, brother, that your daughter, you have a daughter.
That's the only person that I can't figure out how to establish a boundary.
That's the only one that got you, huh?
I can't figure it out. Yeah.
Now, how old is your daughter now?
22.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and still ain't got the boundary. You had 22 years to figure it out. Still ain't got it right.
Still ain't got my daughter will literally jump in my car and say, "Can we go get some ice cream?" And I say, "No," while I'm driving to the ice cream place. You know what I mean? So I just say no to make myself feel like
He still got control.
yeah. But the whole time, and when I say no, she don't even say why or nothing. She already know that the car is headed.
She don't
ice
that. So with that
Yeah.
being said, man, how does your daughter feel about the way the world sees her father?
I don't, she don't even, you know what? It seems like when I was 31, which is when I started doing poetry, Brooklyn was born in 2002. So that would have made her 9 years old. She's 22 now. So for most of her life, I have been doing poetry. And she almost seemed immune to it. I remember one time, and not to liken myself to Jay-Z, but I remember one time Jay-Z was talking about he dropped his daughter off of school. And he had just won some type of award. I think it was the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So he's dropping his daughter off of school, and he says to her, "You know, your daddy won to such and such." She was like, "Oh, daddy." And she just got out of the car like, "What does it mean to me?" You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's kind of how Brooklyn is. She's just kind of like, and I could tell her, like, "Yeah, I'm going to do this blah, blah, blah show." She said, "Oh, okay, have fun." You know what I mean? Like, nothing excites her. She just kind of, desensitized to it.
Well, she grew up in this life. So, and
Yeah.
what's crazy is that I was so excited for my daughter to see the stuff that I was doing. My daughter's 32, by the way. You know what I mean? So she grew up with it, and I'm like, baby, I'm doing this and that. At first, for her, I don't think it was a big deal till her friends started seeing her dad on TV and seeing it. And it was like, yo, that's your dad. And it was like, oh yeah, that's my dad. He's cool or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And it was still that.
Yeah.
But so with that being said, man, we kind of keep referencing like the entertainment industry and things of that nature, you are at a space to where I'm sure you got some celebrity fans. I know Jill Scott's a big poetry fan,
Mhm.
and Wale. You know what I mean? You got some fans that are like some major celebrities. Have you shaken hands and crossed those spaces with them?
There are people who that like I can go in my phone and the number is in my phone. I would have never imagined the number would be in my phone. And I don't really talk about those things too often because like the name dropping thing is just. But yes, there's people who have reached out to me. There was one person who reached out to me, and I didn't believe it was that person. And I told my daughter, my daughter's a girl, so I figured she got these investigative magic powers. So I said, hey, look, go research this and make sure this. She came back like 5 minutes later. Yep, it's really him. Right. So I started communicating. It was a person that says, hey, I'm an assistant for this person. This person wants to talk to you. So I communicated with the person. They told me, hey, just be in front of your computer at this time and we're going to jump on the Zoom. And then I'm sitting there on the Zoom and boom, this person pops up. And I'm like, wow. Right. So there's definitely people who I've never expected. I mean, people who I've been watching all my life. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Fresh Prince of Bel Air, right? The star of the Fresh Prince of Bel Air. I'm sitting on the computer just talking to this. He's like, hey, just write my number down, right? And write his number down. And I watched that as a kid. I don't expect to be holding a conversation with these people. So there's definitely people who, and you probably can notice I'm just reluctant to name drop. It's just not my bag. But yeah, I never expected to hold conversations with these people or they'll reach out to me in a DM and tell me how much they appreciated something. And I'm like, damn, I was a kid watching this person.
Yeah,
It's a blessing.
it is a
Power of
blessing, man.
social media.
So
Yeah.
my question to you, and so social, you keep throwing me the lob. Like I man, you are great at this. So two things. First of all, do you ever take time to sit and reflect on where you're at now as compared to what you would have never imagined? Do you reflect on how far you've come and how great things are?
Yeah, all the time. All the time because I just know that it could have been a whole lot different. And not just because of my environment, but because of decisions I made. Even when I left that environment, you can leave an environment. There's a certain mentality that is going to go with you. You know what I mean? So I was one of those kids. I grew up and my mother had two jobs probably all of my life, but never really had a surplus of money. The people in my neighborhood who had money didn't have jobs. So in my mind, you don't make money with a job. You make money by doing something else, and your job is just an explanation for why you got it, right? So even when I joined the military, that was my mentality. So there was a whole bunch of stuff going on why I was in the military that right now today, I don't have the space to do anything wrong. Nothing. If somebody dropped their wallet, they had $1 million in their wallet, I would chase them down and get that wallet back because anything is just like, hey, you on borrowed time. You know how you go to court to get your suspended sentence? We're giving you 20 years, but we're gonna suspend the sentence. If you have any dealings with law enforcement, we're going to activate that. That's how I feel like. I feel like right now my life is a suspended sentence. And if I do anything wrong, that time is going to be activated. You know what I mean? So as a result of that, it's very, very often I'm absolutely grateful. I absolutely reflect on what it is now versus what it should have been. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah, I don't take nothing for granted.
And you know what, man? I think that that's one of the dopest things about your mindset. I think it comes across in the way you carry yourself. That you don't come across as someone who's taking it lightly. And everything seems intentional with you. You and this could just be my perception because I'm brother. I'm not even gonna sit here in front with you. I'm a fan of your art. But more importantly, having this conversation, I'm a fan of the man that I met. So I get to see these dualities and how it all comes together. But one of the things that I think that you capitalized off of, and it's almost stupid for me to ask you if it was intentional, but there's social media and the way that you presented yourself and continue to on social media. Was that a marketing plan, or was that just like, I need to get it out, let me do this, and it works, so I'm gonna keep doing it?
It was just something to play with in the beginning, the way everybody else was doing it. And then I noticed how it can be elevating, or how it can help me to establish myself in a space that I wanted to establish myself in. And then it became intentional. I mean, intentional to the point to where I came up with a posting schedule. This thing was on some dry erase paper on my wall, and it says daily, this is what you will post. Weekly, this is what you will post. Monthly, this is what you will post. Create a commercial that represents your page. That commercial will be an ad on the first. Every first of the month, your marketing dollars, $100, will go towards that ad. And I did that for maybe 2-3 years. So it became intentional. But in the beginning, it was just something to log on to and mess around the same way everybody else was doing it. And then I realized that you can go pay for a billboard in your neighborhood, and you pay $1,000 and they put a billboard up, and the only people that's going to see it are the people that travel that road. Or you can create a commercial and put it on social media, and now there's someone in the country that you've never been to who may see it. So I started to spend money on myself through this platform, and I just looked at it as marketing dollars instead of me spending money so they can put something on the bus stop with my face on it.
Yeah.
Let me just put $100.
When did Obi West become the business brand, the business other than just the artist?
Officially, 2014 is when I started my LLC. That was officially when I created a business formation. And that's probably around the same time that the mentality that this needs to be more of a business popped up, is around that time frame. 2014 is when it was like, okay, let me pay attention to both sides of this, not just the execution of it, but the business side. I remember a guy named Mark Fleming. Mark Fleming is a business owner in OKC. And Mark Fleming has a venue called Ice Event Space, and an Ice Event Center. And he created an opportunity for me and 2 other poets to have a reoccurring monthly show where we were the features of that show. And the show started to gain all types of notoriety to where we started bringing people in from the outside. People like Black Ice and Sonny Patterson. He would bring these people in. And people started contacting me and saying, hey, get with Mark and see if I can. And I would give these names to Mark, right? And Mark would say, what's their website? And then I would ask them, they would say, I don't have a website. And Mark would say, well, I can't invest in a person who hadn't invested in themselves yet. And he wouldn't even go look and see what their poetry sounded like. That stuck with me. How many other businesses, how many other opportunities are doing that exact same thing? Yeah, so at that point, yeah.
And believe me, brother, when I created the mobile app, that I had, and my concept was I had no idea what I was doing. I had a vision, a concept, and things to that nature. But going into the spaces when you do the mobile app, you don't think you have to have a website. I got an app.
Right.
Man, there's so many different intricate pieces to business that people look at Obi West now and see what he's doing and how he's moving, but the intricate pieces that played into the business brand that allowed you to be this artist that people get to see is what most people don't have the patience nor the know-how, or ignorant to the business aspect of it. They think that if I'm just good enough at this poetry, I'll just be amazing and I'll go viral and everybody's going to want me. But you're going to run into somebody who's going to say, where's their website? Let me see.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or send me the proposal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And things of that nature. So, you have done great at your marketing and things of that nature, getting you in front of people, which I think is dope because that just exposes the world to more of authentic talent. And Rudy Francisco and all of those guys, they kind of posted their videos and marketing things of that nature, but you haven't really seen anybody who was really branding and just putting it out there in their face like you had on a consistent basis. So, man, I'm really, really proud of you, and congratulations on just your work ethic, because that really shows. If anybody who's been to your show, one of the dopest things that you do is you have a conversation that includes poetry, which for some people who don't know us would think that at some point in this conversation we can start spitting poetry because we have a rhythmic way of communicating. It's natural.
Right.
But if you've ever seen a Obi West show, we'll be talking just like this and it'll drop into a whole piece. And it's Outstanding and amazing. Congratulations on that. Don't know what it had anything to do with any of this. Just thought about it, so I
Appreciate
figured I'd say.
it. Appreciate it.
But on the flip side of this, man, let's ask the question that all the women want to know. Are you married?
No, I'm not married.
Okay. Is there a
Yeah.
special person in your life?
Of a whole bunch of them. Yeah, not from the standpoint of like a romantic special person, but right now with me, I have this absolute, and I don't want to be too long-winded. I have this absolute attachment with autonomy. I've figured out how to find peace of mind with where I am. That it's very, very hard to attach to anything that doesn't feel like a threat to it. You know what I mean? So, and I can go
No,
for 10, 30
no,
minutes.
wait, Paul. I see what you did there. You just gonna keep going. I
Yeah,
find it very hard to attach to anything that.
that doesn't feel like a threat to my. Remember when I was talking earlier about the recruiter came in my house and the recruiter was like, I can give you this. If you are a person and your happiness is based on you being able to find companionship or that type of attachment. And whenever you're in the absence of that, you feel a void. So you're never really happy when you're alone, right? You associate love into peace of mind. So that person is going to be easy to dangle anything in front of their face that looks like love because it feels better than where I am now. I got a chance of being happy in that. I have no chance of being happy in, but when you found peace of mind in solitude, then like that recruiter dangled money in front of my face. I didn't even care about the potential of going to war because I associated money with happiness. And then you dangled that in front of my face. I left home the next month. You know what I mean? But if I was already at home where I had disposable income, I already had that, he wouldn't have got a recruit that day. So it's the same thing as when our happiness is dependent on something external. It is easy for anything external to pull us out of the place that we're in. When you've already found happiness in solitude, you've already figured out what peace of mind feels like, then anything that looks like a threat, you become a little fearful of it. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So, yeah, right now, you know.
Scared. But so with that being said, man, are you just head down, focused on remaining in your progressive state, safe space, making movements, doing what you have become comfortable in doing, and it's like this is it, this is all, you don't have space for that, or is it like it'll come down the line, this is just what I'm gonna do now?
Yeah, I'm not really living according to a calendar like that. I just know what's most important to me is peace of mind.
Yes, sir.
Right? That's what's most important to me. So what's going to contribute to that, and then what's going to take away from that? Simple mathematics, right? So there may be a thing right now today that I tell you out of my mouth, I ain't for that. Tomorrow I may be introduced to a version of that absolutely makes me feel more peaceful than I am today. And then I'll talk to you the day after and be like, remember that shit I told you?
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So
where I'm at
I'm
now.
not so I'm not living according to a calendar like that. I just know what has to be there is my peace of mind. And I'm able to recognize when something feels like a threat to that. And I'm able to recognize when something don't. And then I move according to that. But I'm not dead set on, I'm dead set that this is going to be me for, you know what I mean? I think whenever we do that, there may be a space in life that's more comfortable, more beneficial, more progressive, and we are prematurely or premeditated. There's a premeditated blockage of that thing because we've already committed to just operating in this space. I'm committed to operating under peace of mind.
Period.
So that's what it, yeah. So that's what it connects to. Then,
Yeah, brother,
yeah.
I just want to let you know that this whole clip will be used for evil and good. There's gonna be somebody who's gonna misinterpret that completely. Like, no, I want to be in a relationship. I need peace, baby. But it's really dope, man, that you stay centered like that. That you do stay centered like that. And you know, you mentioned earlier how you do it. So for those who are just checking in, check earlier because he mentions on how he stays in that space. Um, with the current state of like just the world in general, um, do you feel that having this voice that it's almost like you already answered my question, so I'm just gonna keep answering for the people who may
Yeah.
not have caught it. But do you feel obligated to speak uh, logic into people and to have a voice for the voiceless? Do you feel obligated to do that, knowing that you have this stage now, this personification?
That's a great question, man. I feel, me personally, I feel an obligation. Do I feel like it's an obligation for every poet? That may be a different answer. I feel like poetry is medicinal, right? It's like one of those things where they say, if the cabin temperature drops in the plane, put your mask on first, right? And I think that's what poetry is. It's your mask first. And if you got the capacity after you put your mask on to help someone adjacent to you, then by all means, it'd be great for you to do it. But my personal fulfillment is connected to being able to be helpful in certain spaces, which is why advocacy, sexual assault and prevention, harassment prevention, which is why I've been able to do it for so long, which is why I don't think I'll ever stop doing it, because the fulfillment of just being able to share something that makes somebody better prepared to face a situation, that's that's compensation for me. So because of what fulfills me, I feel a personal obligation. I feel like it's like a news. I heard somebody say poets shouldn't talk about anything that's not personal to them, right? And my viewpoint on that is, you have a lot of people in the world, and everybody reaches to a different source for information. Somebody reached to the pastor for information. Other people look to the news for information. And then there's a group of people who look to us for information. So imagine a news broadcaster that can only talk about their personal life. How much would you learn about the world? You won't learn anything.
Right.
So I feel like we are news broadcasters for a certain demographic of people. Now, the flip side of that is, as poets, I'm sure you've run into this. Every time something happens in the world, somebody gonna message you and tell you you need to go write a poem about it. You know what I mean? Anytime something happens, I think as poets, we have to figure out, there's a lot of things that are important to me, but all of those things don't resonate through poems. You know what I mean? Just because they're all important, I can't stretch myself out and figure out I have to be the voice for all those things. So the thing that has chosen me is sexual assault and harassment prevention. That's the space that I lock into, right? We have Black injustice, we have all types of other things, and there's another person who locks into that. There's another person that locks into that. So if we all stay ultra committed to that one thing we locked into, collectively, we'll cover all bases. But don't text me telling me I need to write about all this shit. I'm not doing it. You know what I
I'm
mean?
not doing it.
I used to be a person who was overly ambitious. You got me on a soapbox. I was overly ambitious. So I would think about, here's a good business idea. Here's a good business idea. Here's a good business idea. And I would put a little bit of effort into all of it. And none of them would move forward because I wasn't putting enough focus into one, right? So if I have all these different world issues and I'm trying to put a little bit, I'm not going to move forward on any of them. But if I put all my focus into this one, and then you put all your focus into your one, and then Prentice put all his focus into his one, and Black Chakra put all his focus into his one, and this person put, then collectively we'll cover it all.
Yeah.
But I don't succumb to the pressure of writing about a topic because it's what's going on in the world, and someone says they want to hear from me about that topic.
Yeah. And and you're right. But the thing about it is that people look at you to become that newscaster, that broadcaster.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to hear it from anybody else other than you.
Yeah.
So it does become that challenge, and for, like you said, with your advocacy that you're with, mine was mental health, and it wasn't intentional. I dealt with mental health in the Black family the whole time. I've never really suffered from it to a detriment. I've experienced it, but when COVID hit, man, I was doing the live, and what I didn't realize is how dark the spaces had became. How just how many people around the world was hurt. Because at the time I was still living in Denver. What was crazy is that when I would go on the live, I would have 6 or 7 poets on from Denver, but then I had 27 posts from New York, 37 from, from around the world, and everybody was going through their thing. But at some point, it became a safe space because I was really pouring into people just because that's how I communicate. It's just who I am. And what I realized is that these people were looking for this live to be able to download and just
Hmm.
get it out there. And I'm giving this conversation, this feedback because it was normal. It's just how I communicate. But what ended up happening is that they started looking for me to give
Hmm.
them that advice. And there would be times where I wouldn't get on the live or, things were going on. Everybody was, and I got people messaging me like, what are you doing? Why are you not on the live? How, I can't live without this. You don't know I was thinking about killing myself today. And now this live is not on. And I'm like, hey, man, you can't base your life on things to this
Yeah.
nature. So there is a lot of weight that comes with that too,
Yeah.
you know. Um, but once again, like you said, man, before, like creating your boundaries and keeping your solitude is really important. Um,
Very important. You mind if I say something about that before you go on?
no, go ahead.
Um, the scenario that you just gave, what I see happening is there's people coming to you saying, hey, I need you to be on this live. I need you to be on this live. I need you to be on this live. And what happens when you stretch yourself beyond your bandwidth, then the person who's providing the support ends up being the one killing themselves because the dependency becomes too much for them to handle. And the only way they can escape from it is just leaving Earth, right? So I think we have to protect ourselves from what we have the potential to do to ourselves if we succumb to that pressure. Someone asked me to do a presentation on suicide prevention. And I started writing the presentation. And then I stopped and I called them back and I declined because I didn't want that to be a money grab. They were about to pay me about $6,000 to go talk for an hour. But I felt like I haven't addressed this topic. There's other people who are more outfitted to give information about this topic to where it's going to be beneficial to the listener. I can say something fancy about it, and sonically you'll be impressed by what I said, but I'm talking about applicable information. So I think whenever we start allowing ourselves to be pulled into spaces that we don't have a lot of information about just to satisfy those requests, we start giving watered down information. And it sounds nice because it's coming from the voice that they like to hear. It sounds nice because it's fancy in the way that we deliver it, but there's no usable information in it because we weren't the best person outfitted to do it. Right. So at the end of the day, for me, it's about, am I do I feel like I'm confident? Am I confident enough to address this topic and there to be a usable income outcome, something that people can? And if I'm not, or if I don't have an original opinion about it, and I got to go conjure an opinion just to satisfy this request, I stay away from it. And that's part of the boundaries.
Yeah.
So I think we just have to be responsible enough to know I might not be the best person for the job or good for this job at all, even though I could probably do it to a point that's going to trick you into thinking I said some shit.
Yeah. And what's crazy is and just like the flip side of that is that sometimes does put you in a space that leads you to something that you're actually really good at, that you are equipped to do. And you probably would have never done it if it didn't come that way. You know, with
Mm-hmm.
the mental health thing with me, just like I said, speaking to people and being a genuine concerned person and dealing with, mental health issues in my family and things like that, I knew what to do. But what ended up happening, man, is I was blessed enough that someone somewhere seen it, sent it to a mental health, facility in Denver, and then they reached out to me and was like, "Hey, let me put you through this training and do all of these kind of things to get you
Mm-hmm.
certified. We want to sponsor a part of your show because you're giving out this information. So now I need you to, you reaching the community we can't touch. So now please give out the suicide hotline. Please give the preventative information, and then we're going to give you the tools to go ahead and do it." Which was
Right.
crazy because I always worked in mental health, but had never really thought, well, let me take this serious because I didn't go to college to get the degree. I didn't think I even had the fortitude
Right.
to be able to do that. But it opened up doors, man. And one of the things that a lot of people don't, and I guess we as artists and individuals with a voice don't realize is that we do become a form of therapy if we want to.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Right.
any time you open your mouth and you do the poem about the chick at the gym and you running it through and somebody's watching it like, yo, I was thinking the exact same thing. What you've done is you've made that person who may have felt isolated relatable. Now they know they're not the only one.
Very
And
true.
that becomes therapy, man. And that's a lot of pressure for those who do this art.
Right.
But even outside the art. So now when you're walking the streets and you're moving around in this space and they recognize you as Obi West, the poet, does it ever frustrate you that, like, yo, I'm more than just a poet?
No, because that's all I've given you to know about me. If you know anything more than that, I'm wondering how you know.
Come on now.
You know what I mean? If you,
You've been in my solitude
yeah,
space.
if you start naming off stuff that's in my house, now I'm wondering how you get in there. So I understand that people are going to recognize me based on what I have given them to recognize me for. I think if I went out there and I was intentional about not separating myself from the poetry title, but also expanding and saying, no, I sing too, and I rap too, and I do this, and people wasn't catching on, and they was just saying the poet, then there would be some frustration there. But that's all I ever present myself as, right? Even within the advocacy, those advocacy trainings for those federal government organizations, those are facilitated through poetry. So even that, it's poetry. So everything that I'm involved in, poetry is the foundation of it. So if that's the case, and somebody's going to say the poet, and I'm like, okay, I did it
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
You
Now,
know
the
what I
question
mean?
is, come on now. You keep giving them to me. So with that being said, who is Obi West outside of the poetry?
Outside of the poetry, a father, yeah, a father, right? And that even gets skewed sometimes. I remember sitting in the car talking to my daughter one day, and I'm trying to push a point to her, and I'm going, and the words are just coming to me, and I'm explaining myself, and I go for about 30 minutes, and I'm thinking, she getting it, she getting it, she getting it. And as soon as I got through, she said, why everything you say sound like you reciting a poem? I'm like, you know what? Just get the fuck out of my face. You know what I mean? So, but outside of that, a father, outside of the artistry, those are the two things that consume or my life consists of the most. There's not a day that I wake up that I don't participate in art, and there's not a day that I wake up that I don't participate in parenting. I don't know if there's anything else. There's even days that I wake up that I don't even participate in being a son. You know what I mean? That I haven't spoke to my mother, I haven't spoke to my father, I haven't. But there's not a day that goes by I don't participate in one of those two things.
Absolutely. Now, I'm gonna give you this stretch. What if you couldn't do the poetry? Now, and so let me take a step back. Also,
Mm-hmm.
businessman. Like you could throw businessman in that at any time because the artistry is what it is, but the business behind the
Mm-hmm.
artistry is also businessman. So I'm gonna put that on your shirt, even if you don't want it, just like the tag on the back, like the kicking it sign. It's a business. But if you couldn't do poetry anymore,
Mm-hmm.
where
What
would
would I do?
what would you do?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. I think it's one of those things that if if you lost your sense of touch, you don't know which one of your other senses are going to be strengthened, right? You're just hoping that God strengthens the one that you're going to lean on the most after you've lost. You know, they say when you lose one sense, another sense is strengthened. You don't know what sense that is. I don't know what of me is going to be strengthened if I lose what I'm already operating in. I have no clue. I just pray that whichever one it is one that helps me breathe the way poetry does. But I have no clue what I would do. No clue. I would get on my daughter's nerves.
For sure. Now, what you do in the poetry? Do you do public speaking too? That doesn't include the artistry, like
No.
seminars and things like that about the
They
art.
all include, yeah, they all include poetry. Even remember how you was talking about the transitions from conversation to poem to conversation? So when I go to organizations and they say, we need you to talk about male victimization, I'll start off by talking about, it may be a poem that from a male's perspective who has been assaulted. And it talks about the hardships of being a man who has been assaulted. And then that transitions into the discussion about that assault. And then if I start talking, so it's, I'm trying to think, I don't want to give you the wrong answer, but I can't think of not one engagement that I've had that it didn't involve poetry. Yeah, so for the corporate, what I do for federal government, it involves poetry. What I do for the nightlife, It involves poetry. It's all, yeah, poetry is the foundation of all.
Well, man, look, I am. I mean, first of all, I can't say that I knew it would be this conversation, but then I can say that I knew it would be this conversation. You know, I've met you personally. I've shaken your hand and looked in your eyes, and I know the man that you are. Um, and I'm honored that you told me yes to this because you don't do everything like you mentioned. So I really
Yeah,
appreciate you. And this ain't the first time that I called on you, you know.
yeah.
Um, and I'm very
In
grateful.
Dallas, Texas was the last time we connected, right?
Yeah, man.
It's
Yeah,
Dallas. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then I reached out to you for the poetry retreat, and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
you gave me the drop on that, which was super dope. You know,
Yeah.
I appreciate that, man. Because you are very um, respected in this community, um, and nationally and internationally, but even outside of the community, being recognized as being just a voice for the artistry. And I don't know if you know this, but people who don't like poetry and don't know poetry like you and like the poetry you do, and I'll get the statements like, I don't really care for poetry, but yeah, I rock with Old West. Well, that's
Well,
poetry. You know,
yeah.
everybody ain't good as dude. You know what I'm saying? But you do represent a art, intentional or not. So, man, hold that flag, brother. Um, with with moving forward, what is the anything that you would want to say to anyone who's watching, who's listening, who knows or may not know you? Is there any jewels that you want to leave with them before we go ahead and shut down this line?
Yeah, good question. Every day you live, I always say this, every day you live is one day less that you have left. So all of us, even myself, even if I can't name it right now on top of my head, we're living with some level of restriction. There's some self-imposed restriction that we have that's not allowing us to operate at our fullest in one space or the other. I would just say, take the chance and rid yourself of those restrictions. Right? Fear has been a catalyst for us not doing things. And fear is natural. It's going to happen, but I think we just can't be paralyzing. We got to still function while we're scared. All right. So I think that's something common amongst us all. We get 100 people, and somebody is dealing with some self-imposed restriction. Even the most accomplished person we look at right now, there's something they want to do that for some reason they talk themselves out of doing it. So I would just say rid yourself of those self-imposed restrictions. Try it once or twice, and you'll notice that even if you're not what you consider successful, you'll learn something. So you're more prepared to be successful the second time you try. And then, I think it'll make life a lot more worth living. It's like, what's the use to being alive if you ain't gonna live, right?
Right, right. They say YOLO, right? You only live once, which is false.
Yeah.
You live often. You only die once. So for people who are in the chat right now, if y'all have a question, go ahead and do the question thing, and we'll go ahead and get it going. And I just want to once again, man, just tell you, I really appreciate you for taking the time out to even, sit on this live and have a conversation with me. And what's so dope? Let me tell you how dope this brother is. I reached out and was like, yo, if we can, this is what I would like to do. He was like, yeah, let's figure it out. He didn't ask me what we going to talk about, what's going to be the questions, are we going to do anything? The only thing I got was the statement that we had, and other, like it was one of those things where it was just like, man, you are humble in spirit, but super a man of respect on so many different levels, man. And I've never seen you outside of that character. So for the people who's wondering if he's really who he is in the art, yeah, he's that guy.
I appreciate that.
He's really that damn cool or whatever. you know. And yeah, man. So if anybody has any questions, don't let your biggest mistakes in life be not living. Shy the Realist, man. He is a dope poet out of Rochester. One of the most amazing performing poets. He's a spoken word artist.
Absolutely.
And he's one of the poets that was here during the retreat, or was gonna be here during the retreat and things of that nature. So at some point we're gonna get you out. For
Yeah, absolutely.
retreats.
Absolutely. Let's figure it out.
Yeah, that's how we do. But other than that, man, like I'm grateful for you, brother. The reason that I even asked you to be on this live is because this is really about people who've inspired me, whose conversations, whose meetings have inspired me. And I want to let you know personally, I'm going to give you your flowers while I got you here, is that watching you move and the way that you move with integrity has always been something that I could fasten, I look at as being something that I could relate to. You are a man of your word. You speak with with intentions. You move with purpose, and brother, that is your gift. When you speak into that camera and you share your soul, you are literally touching each and every one of them people who follow you or who like that post, and that's your God-given gift. And I have to say that I'm honored to know you. You know, um, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people who feel that way. But man, I just want to let you know that not only do you have people who support your art and things of that nature, but you have people who are praying for you as the man you are, that you continue to be successful in whatever route you choose. So I am one of those guys. And when you hit Houston again, man, know I'm here. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I
And I
appreciate
appreciate
that, man. Thanks for even considering me and trusting me on this platform. I don't take that lightly.
yeah. You know what it is. That's the man, the myth, the living legend right there. Y'all have had a chance to witness him and see him personally. So at this point, man, you have an amazing night, brother, and I'll be speaking with you sooner than later, man.
Absolutely. Likewise, man. Be blessed, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Man, look at that there. That's what I'm talking about. Um, I, I want to say that I'm in awe, but it's God's work, man. I couldn't expect anything less. Not because I knew, but because it's God's work, man. That was a powerful conversation, and for the people who always follow his art but never knew his story, I hope, and he just messaged me saying he appreciates it. Like that's what I'm talking about, man. Um, I hope that you understand that this is the process. Like this is what it is. There's more to people than the art. There's more to their story. There's more to who they are than just the things that they show you or that you're used to seeing. So, please share this. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Like this is what the point of Real Talk is about. And hopefully, I'll continue to be in this space to be able to have these conversations with real people who do amazing things. And yeah, every Thursday. This is what we do, and I'll have different individuals here who have different stories who either have figured it out, trying to figure out, and made it. But please take these jewels. And this no man, like you said, every day you live in it, one day less. So remove those restrictions, man. Don't live in fear. Make it work. And I would never had that conversation with that man if I wasn't encouraged by my wife to do the same thing. Wow. Man, keep your circle strong, stay in your solitude, create your boundaries, and know your limits. So much I got from this. Oh, shoot. If y'all ain't following me, please do. And once again, share this. The voice, Mr. Reality, aka Greg Delaney. This is Real Talk. That just happened. I'm gonna see y'all next Thursday. And please keep in mind, mental health is a thing. So we ask that you continue keep yourself mentally healthy, mentally strong. And if you can't, then find the resources to do what needs to be done to stay that way. Reach out to somebody. Just don't go through it by yourself. You don't have to. Everybody got a story. Live to tell yours. We'll get it up. Real talk. Let's go. Jesus.